still only hearing out of one ear.
All right.
Yep. No, it's the opposite here?
Yeah.
America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
Sorry, a little bit.
Now.
Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
From Hollywood, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. This is Ed McMahon along with Doc Severinsen and the NBC Orchestra. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Johnny.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. I'm Douglas Viviani, sitting here with the rather provocative David Cohen. This year, we have seen the retirement of longtime late-night talk show host Jay Leno and David Letterman. Correct?
Correct.
You are correct,
You
sir.
are correct, sir.
And they've been replaced by... There we go. It starts. We've been replaced by Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert recently. Just came on the air. So all the while, we've had Jimmy Kimmel, James Corden, Seth Meyers, Conan and O'Brien. They're all alive and well. Late night TV is alive and well. The question is, when we take a look at this, let's take a look at today, the godfather of all of these shows, The Tonight Show. In general, and maybe in some specifics, being the Godfather being Johnny Carson. But we're going to take a look at all of the history of just the Tonight Show.
Just the Tonight Show.
Tonight, sir.
Yes.
And we're going to call this the foundation of the success.
Building blocks.
The
if
building
you will.
blocks of Jimmy Fallon. And who are you imitating, by the way?
I have
In case
no
someone
idea.
doesn't-
Some like Ed McMahon clone or bad imitation. Yeah.
Okay. And we had to take a look and realize that
Who are you imitating? Who are you imitating there, sir?
you could just say Ed McMahon. It would have gone very easily.
I was kind of hoping you'd just know it was him.
Well, I'm speaking for the audience at some point.
I know.
You know. And people that are watching Jimmy Fallon, let's say younger people, they're just watching him. They
Or
think,
us. We watch him.
Well, I'm saying, but the younger folks think that that's it. It's began maybe with him, and don't
Right.
understand that there
True.
was a McMahon, there was a Steve Allen. How many? I'm going to ask you, if you know, how many? Is kind of a trick question. How many hosts? Not how many times they host. How many hosts were there or are there for the Tonight Show total?
I would say 5.
Okay, you are wrong, sir.
Wrong, sir.
There is Steve Allen, Jack Parr, Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, and I'm not going to count Jay Leno again, but it's the same person. He came back, and Jimmy Fallon. So that is how many? 2, 4, 6 total. That's it. The show started in 1954, basically 60 years ago.
Before television. No.
It was the infancy of television. Let's take a listen to the first Tonight Show, the first one, starring, and the first of the first one, let's put it that way, starring Steve Allen.
Wow, this is the very
In
first.
case you're just joining us, this is Tonight. I want to give you the bad news first. This program is going to go on forever. Boy, you think you're tired now. Wait till you see 1 o'clock roll around. It's a long show, and we especially selected this for this very late show because this theater's, I think it sleeps about 800 people.
Okay, now does he remind you, just thinking about him, just before we get into his detail, but does he remind you of any current, kind of recent talk show host?
Letterman.
Yeah, he's like kind of that deadpan.
Right, yeah.
Like some comedians laugh at themselves or at the joke they say or what have you. He's totally deadpan. And what do you think is the similarity?
Yeah, no, I heard that right away as I was listening to. I knew it was Steve Allen, but I definitely heard, Letterman in that kind of, the whole thing
The
about
cadence or something.
right, putting down the show already before it even starts, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Self-deprecating.
Exactly.
I guess,
Right.
Doesn't take himself too seriously. And we'll talk
Sleeps 800. I mean, that's funny. Yeah, that's a
the
Letterman
first
thing.
joke
Right.
of the show. Now, David Letterman clearly has been caught saying this, and they've been asked the question. Certainly his hero was Johnny Carson, but when they asked him to do his show, they wanted him to do something different than Carson, and they had limits on the time of monologue that he would have and other things, and they said, you can't do the same exact show. So he said, well, what am I going to do? He went back, and he watched Steve Allen, and he was highly influenced by Steve Allen in the creation of the David Letterman shows.
like sort of gave him ideas, things like that.
Yeah,
right?
and the format and so forth. So this format of Steve Allen was basically him at a piano. A lot of the time in the beginning, he played piano, and he had lots of different people that came on that you'll have come to know, like a Tom Poston, a Louis Nye, a Don Knotts. They were like little characters that came on in little skits. That's where that came from. Well, let's listen to a smidge of one called "The Man on the Street" with Don Knotts.
There's our next man on the street. Your name, sir?
My name is D.D. Morrison, and I'm a bodyguard for Vice President Nixon.
Well, by the way, what's the DD for?
Duck Dick.
My goodness, Nixon's bodyguard. That's a very responsible job. Tell me, sir, does that make you nervous?
Makes him kind of nervous.
I can see.
So even a couple of years later, 60 to be exact, that's still kind of funny. Don Knotts, he doesn't go away. He's a comedy
Still
genius.
around today. So Steve Allen, very first host of The Tonight Show. There was no other show like it at the time, correct?
Correct.
It's a late night concept. So, cool. All right,
Yes,
we're off to
and,
the races.
Yes, and just so you know, Steve Allen did other things than these Men on the Street interviews. Of course, he interviewed people, and in addition to that, he did things like Letterman did. Remember when Letterman buried himself in a vat of put
the Alka-Seltzer tablets
on him
right.
and buried himself into water and things
Jumped
like that.
on the Velcro wall, right, in the Velcro suit.
So Steve Allen was not afraid to make a fool of himself, so to speak, and do that as well. Let's listen to the next host. Jack Parr started in '57, 3 years later.
I'm leaving the Tonight Show. There must be a better way of making a living than this.
3, 2, 1. Here's Jack.
As I was saying before I was interrupted, I believe my last words were that there must be a better way of making a living than this. Well, I have looked, and there isn't.
Okay, so that's a fellow by the name of Jack Parr, if you're not familiar. Started in '57, ended in '62. His format was different. His format was to sit basically in two chairs, almost like there's different shows that do that, but like a Tom Snyder kind of thing. No desk, really, and just talk serious, long, detailed interviews of politicians and whoever was to come on. Certainly had entertainers, and he was witty, they say. I kind of laugh at that, but the main thing he was known for was that at one point in time, that clip is about him being upset because he said a joke that had some potty humor in it, and they told him, we're going to censor you. You can't say things like that. And he walked off with the preposition that you're not going to censor me. I'm going to be able to do whatever and say whatever I want.
And it happened after the opening monologue of a show, right? We heard in that clip him saying he's leaving. And he actually walked off the show right after the monologue and didn't come back.
Correct.
That's crazy.
Crazy. And then he came back, I don't exactly know the timing of it, a month or so later.
It was a few months, I think.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So that was what he was really known for. If you ask your grandparents about this fella, for some reason, and I tried to find out why, they love this guy. Let's listen to him years later on David Letterman.
That scene of me in the basement rehearsing is part of a motion picture called The King of Comedy. Yes.
Based on your experience as a child?
Yeah.
This one scene?
Just the scene in the basement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, how did they know about that scene, Joe?
Oh, shut up.
So he has some quick wit, but he also has a bit of an ego there where he's actually telling David Letterman that if you remember the movie, the fictional movie of King of Comedy, that the De Niro scene was taken from his book, which he had written about his childhood and what he had done.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay.
Also, one other quick fact. Steve Allen left as the first host. He left the Tonight Show because he got a more of a primetime gig. Some theme concept there that will repeat itself later on, which we'll talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And he did a Sunday night show, actually, believe it or not. So we'll be right back. Listen to a little something of this here. The King of Comedy. There he is. So that's the interesting part of Jack Parr to me, is that he stood up for himself and what he cared about, because he was much more of a serious person. There wasn't a band per se on his show, the band leader. That whole format was not in existence for his show, which was 5 years long. And he came after Steve Allen, which kind of had that format. You know, he didn't have so much of the desk and
the
all
standard
that,
as we know it, the standard talk show format.
Right. So I think it's interesting that these people are just, starting and didn't stay that long.
Well, it was an experimental thing at the time, right? It wasn't late night like we know it now, where it's all over the place. It was a new concept.
In doing the research here, also, I think Steve Allen had said it in another PBS interview years and years and years later. He said, when we started the show, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And I don't know if it's different in these days. I go to sleep later, but he said at that hour, no one was even awake. Most people, in that society in the 50s, I don't know if it's different or not, but they were not looking forward, and TV was brand new. They weren't looking forward to watching TV till 1 in the morning.
Right.
And they had one TV in the house and so forth. It wasn't in the bedroom. You know what I mean?
True.
So think about that whole scene. It's not like, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch TV at 11:30 tonight.
Start watching at 11:30.
And get up at 6 or 6:30 to go to work.
Right.
So it was interesting perspective, and that being the case, when they offered him this Sunday night show, a 2-hour show, he said, I'll grab it.
Right.
Which I don't know if it was a mistake or not, because he did have that for a little while. Another fun fact is that the substitute guest host for Jack Paar was none other than Johnny Carson. There we go.
3 nights.
Right.
Steve Allen would be on 4 nights.
Oh, yeah, he was his guest host. But then
time.
when Steve Allen left, then maybe I guess he was in between with Jack Paar.
He
definitely did.
But
I'll have to look it
we
up.
should.
I have it here. Hold on.
We should asterisk him like Roger
But I don't
Maris.
want to. Yeah, Ernie Kovacs. He did it from 56 to 57. October, 3 months worth. He was the host.
We should mention him. Even though nobody ever talks about him.
Well, he did it for 3 months before Jack Paar.
I thought he also, for a time, he was splitting.
He was the guest host. That was it for those 3 months with Groucho Marx.
But in addition, when Steve Allen was doing it, there was a time period where Steve Allen would only do 4 nights.
Okay.
And Kovacs would do the other 3.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. The guest
and then
host.
I guess after Steve Allen left, I guess Kovacs took over for a few months.
And some other guys here we never heard of did a couple months each. I don't want to get into it.
It was a whole different show, though. It was like more of a news show, I think.
Okay.
It wasn't even called, I don't think it was called The Tonight Show. Yeah, it gets a little murky.
It's too,
right.
And it's only 3 months out of 60 years.
Right.
We could ignore it. All right, anytime you're ready.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Always really solid. The star of Who Do You Trust? Johnny Carson.
You've got to admit it, even if you live here, Los Angeles is a pretty silly town. I was standing on a corner, minding my own business, and a fellow comes up in a car. He stops right in front of me. He sticks his head out the window, and he says, say, do you know how to get to Griffith Park? And I said, gee, I'm terribly sorry I don't. And the guy says, well, you go 3 blocks straight ahead, turn left, and you can't miss it.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. We are discussing the history of The Tonight Show, and we're turning the page here and looking at Johnny Carson. That clip, though, it's interesting. These fellas don't come out of nowhere. Carson was on Steve Allen, the first Tonight Show, in the mid to late 50s, 54 to 57, a few times, and that was one engagement where he was on as
a guest.
Comedian, a guest.
Right.
Yeah. So he was there, and then with Jack Paar later, if you look at it later on with Jack Paar, he was a substitute host. If Paar had a problem, couldn't make it, whatever, Carson came on. And
do we know why Paar left? Why Johnny took over permanently?
Jack Paar, he did leave. He said that he just could not expel the energy it takes to do this show anymore.
Right.
That was basically it. And if you think about it, his show was not like a written, scripted show. He sat down with Kennedy and Nixon and entertainers for an hour, for 45 minutes, and just spoke to them.
Right.
So I don't know if it takes a lot out of you or not. I mean, I think it would. You have to prepare to sit there and talk to these people without notes and in-depth conversations.
Right. And serious stuff.
Yes.
Right?
So it and he had quips and things like that to make it light. But he was very worn out, you could say, after the 5 years. So then Carson came on, and Carson became the king. He had a new format. Here's the thing. Before he came on as the host, he, the producer, I forget the gentleman's name, and of the show, original producer, and Ed McMahon holed themselves up in Miami for 3 days and in a hotel room to decide what's going to be the format of this show. The show that you see Jimmy Fallon doing now, I'm talking about the basic format of monologue first, guests, or I should say monologue first, a skit of some sort, guests, and then a musical guest at the end, and the show is over. Which is here, like, what was that, 53 years ago, began from that
that meeting,
hotel room in Miami.
Wow, how do you like that? I didn't realize that format was that old.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how it's developed over time. But they broke format a little bit in 1969 with the wedding of Tiny Tim.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the presence of Christ to join this man, Herbert Buckingham Corey, and this woman, Victoria May Budinger, in holy marriage.
No one knew that was actually Tiny Tim's name. In fact, do many people now know who's Tiny Tim?
Other than you and me, probably not a lot.
69, there was 40 million people. 40 million. How many people watched the Super Bowl? 80 today? 40 million people. How many people watched the Beatles? Do you remember? It was somewhere around 40, wasn't it?
Probably.
43 million people. So, like, much of an audience as you could possibly get watch Tiny Tim get married. Here's who Tiny Tim is. You may remember this. Or not.
It goes 9 to 11. I didn't even realize.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's Tiny Tim. He is the fellow that did Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Most people still don't know who he is. But anyway.
But he had that high voice.
Yes, and back in the day, he was pretty well known.
I used to love Tiny Tim.
Yeah, and he did. Carson did stuff like that all the time. He broke the mold of his own mold, even doing something like Karnak, if you remember that.
Having trouble divining this one? Yeah.
Sis boom ba.
Sis boom ba.
Describe the sound made when a sheep explodes.
Yeah. I get the ba, yeah.
And the sis being
the
that was actually pretty funny.
It is.
And pretty clean.
Right.
He did this gentleman that would come on with this
Karnak
Swami hat and have these envelopes sealed, and he would do that. And I thought that was always a really funny bit. I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch that or not, but it was
definitely
good. Ran a long time. Here's one time when people talk about Ed McMahon, who was his sidekick, and they'd say he was a drunk and so forth, and he really wasn't. He was not the drunk of the two. When Carson would go out socially, and he admits this, 2 or 3 drinks, and he was a nasty drunk. So it really was the reverse, and Carson had to stop drinking in the early 60s as a result of this. But speaking about drinking, and McMahon usually wasn't that way, but one day he showed a little of his personality on air, being drunk on air, the only time.
And you really think you're fooling everybody, don't you?
No.
And she
I'm
also...
just here to do my best to help you.
I know that. And she does her 3 horse shows a day. Did you know that? At the animal park.
Boy.
What?
What an exciting idea.
Would you like an army cot or something? Maybe just to kind of catch up on a little little nappy poo? Just might snap you right out of it.
And then you can look it up on YouTube. It actually goes on and on. It's really funny.
It's great how Johnny went along with it, though, right? He didn't get upset. He just well, I don't know. Maybe he did later. Who knows? But on the air, he just played along right with it, and it worked.
It really did. And Ed McMahon had been, now I don't know if this is ego talking or not. I think it's true. Ed McMahon had said one of the keys to being a good, in this case, he wasn't a co-host at all. He was a sidekick. Totally different. The sidekick in his scenario was the straight man to Carson only during those bits, and then the rest of the time he was going to lay back. Right. He said there were many times in the beginning of the show that in the development of the show, that he would be more of a co-host and be funny and like he was just there. And Carson and Carson's people over time told him, no, you can't upstage Johnny Carson.
Right.
Because if you do that, if other comedians come on and do that, they're there for the one night. you're there every night. You
so
can't
it's
do it.
right. So it evolved into that sidekick type role.
Yes,
right?
and as it did, unfortunately, they became not as close. They still were friendly. They were always got along. Don't get me wrong, but they used to go out all the time. But then Carson stopped drinking, and this business came up with, you're too funny. Really, we can't have two comedians. You got to be the straight person.
It's like what's happening with you and me right now. We used to be really close, and now I'm just a sidekick. And yeah. But the thing I was going to say about the Tonight Show is that you were talking about how people didn't stay up past a certain time, but I mean Carson revolutionized it. Right now, people were looking forward to starting to watch TV at 11:30 till that show went till 1 a.m.
What a great point. They also say, and this is from my research. I was a real little kid at the time, but he was responsible for selling lots of TVs, especially when TV became color, because people wanted to watch Johnny Carson in bed now.
Right.
It's late night.
Right.
I want to hang out, but I want to watch this show. So let's get a TV for the bedroom.
Exactly.
Amazing, because Milton Berle, if you recall, and this goes way, way back in the 50s, was Mr.
I don't recall, Doug.
You don't
Not
remember
in the
that?
50s.
I think it was Mr. Tuesday Night. Anyway, people bought tons of TVs just to see Milton Berle and him dress up as a woman.
Right.
So anyway, later on, I always used to love this when you'd see the show and like Bob Hope or somebody would come on and he'd do their interview and they wouldn't even stay past the interview. They'd say, "Okay, the interview's over." Because in their scenario. In Carson's format, those people stayed and were able to participate with the later
in
guests.
the next discussion, right?
Right, and they were encouraged to do that. Not like now, they get off.
Right.
So part of that happened during the Carson era, and Steve Martin came on board and kind of made fun of that. It was a pretty funny bit.
Look, I wish you good luck on the special. I understand that you have to leave.
I have to
be somewhere this evening and go.
I have to rehearse.
I know.
Rehearse. I appreciate
Thanks for being
it.
here.
Thank you
Steve
very much.
Martin. Thanks, Steve. Funny guy, Steve Martin.
I don't have to leave. I was lying. I see all the big stars come on. They always have to leave. I just thought I'd say I had to leave, but I don't have to.
Steve Martin was actually such a great guest host. I mean, not a guest host. He was a guest host, but
eventually, yeah.
He was very good at that, too, but he was such a great guest. He always brought something to the table.
Yeah,
and I'm going to say this. This might not be right, but just like a Will Ferrell, have you seen him ever on interviews in the Tonight Show format? Whenever he's been on any of those shows, he always brings a bit, something
different
to
every
the table.
time. Yep.
Yeah. And he doesn't just come on and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm in the next movie. This is what the movie's about." I mean, oh my God, is that boring?
Is that a Will Ferrell impersonation?
No, that's not, because he is tremendous. He'll come on and do shtick,
right,
and do a skit. Right. It's really, I think it's great.
Yeah.
It might even be better than his movies because the movies aren't always so good. So anyway, that's his format. We'll come right back on Everything Old is New again. Investigating the Tonight Show. Come on back.
Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by the law office of Douglas Viviani. Douglas Viviani has been providing quality legal service for over 26 years. We're a general practice firm and can handle any legal matter you may have for a reasonable fee. If you're involved in a car accident, starting a business, planning your estate, or need a criminal attorney, please call 631-681-1910 or email us at vivianilaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Get the justice you deserve. Contact the law office of Douglas Viviani at vivianilaw@aol.com. When you're seeking to change your career, apply for a promotion, or trying to find a job, your resume is the first thing that's seen that represents you to a potential employer. Make sure your resume makes a clear, concise, and professional impression of who you are so you can get that job interview. Send your current resume to ResumeDrInc@AOL.com for a free online review. You'll receive a timely reply with a reasonable quote to properly prepare your resume. Let them make sure you have a resume that will get you noticed. Send your resume or questions to ResumeDrInc@AOL.com.
Hey, Mike, did we say Tiny Tim is just not there? Did I not record it?
So that goes from 9 to 11.
Oh, man, it's always, every week, there's always one out of these 100 clips that I forget. I can send it to you easy.
Right? Yeah, we did it with the boxing one this week. It didn't even...
No problem, right? Let me just send myself a note, otherwise I'll forget.
Did I send you the show this week or no?
No.
Okay. I'm going to send both of them to you tomorrow because I have next week's too.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because I'm off, so I had to do double duty this week.
Now, the only thing is on the Halloween show, which we haven't even done yet, but I'll remind you, but if possible, otherwise I'll do it myself, I'd like to... the affiliates are a week behind, but that one I'd like to broadcast.
We do it 4th of July?
Right. Yeah. Send it a little early. Thank you. TV that now, starting in January, is rerunning his show.
Oh,
every
the
night.
Tonight Shows? The whole Tonight Show?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool.
It is cool. I'm trying to get ads for them. I sent a package of stuff to get them to advertise with us. We'll see.
That's a good idea.
We're ready.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with the poignant David Cohen.
Poignant?
Yes, rather poignant.
You are correct, sir.
And we're continuing our discussion of The Tonight Show, and we're in a section now where we're kind of looking at Johnny Carson and his era and going to pass it off to Jay Leno soon. But let's take a look at Johnny Carson. He had, and I don't know, I guess some of them do this now, but he had the biggest stars on the planet on that show all the time.
Yeah, there was never like a B-list celebrity on there, right?
Exactly. These are huge names. You'd have Bob Hope and Jerry Lewis, and whoever was huge. Like, what would be popular now? Who's the biggest star now? Whoever it is. All these people would be on the show all the time.
Can you name one star right now?
I don't know. Tom Cruise is huge now, I guess.
All right. Okay, I'll give you that.
So anyway, let's listen to a little bit of Frank Sinatra and Don Rickles on the show.
I grew up with you, listened to your music, high school and so forth. It just occurred to me, crazy thought this afternoon. When you're in a romantic mood, and you're trying to make out, whose records do you put on? On behalf.
Hey, Frank, it's good to see you. Marco Mangananzo was hurt. Fambino Bombazzo. 2 bullets in the head Thursday.
Listen, can I tell a story about what this man did to me once? Long before Don got married, I was eating dinner in a restaurant in New York. I was sitting with some friends, and he came over to the table, and he said, Frank, do me a favor, will you? He said, I'm sitting with a very pretty girl. I'm trying to make out, you know. And he said, I told her I know you, and she really doesn't believe me. Would you stop by the table? I said, all right. I was just about finished. I was down to the espresso. Finally, he went back, and I walked by the table, and I said, how are you, Don? Nice to see you. He said, can't you see I'm eating, Frank? What are you doing?
That's good.
Typical Don Rickles.
That is so funny.
But think about this for a minute. Don Rickles was the hottest and biggest comedian of the time for years. Sinatra clearly was the biggest star of the era.
Oh, yeah.
Both of them on the same show.
Right. And they stick
time.
around to talk to each other, right?
Exactly. Actually, the premise there was I kind of cut it, but, you know, Rickles came on as a surprise, supposedly. Like, he was just walking the halls there.
Oh, yeah, right.
But, I mean, think about that. And then they tell these stories, and I think some of that is old Hollywood, too. I don't know. Do people now, are there secrets? Are stars hanging out with each other, see each other in restaurants? I don't know. I don't see
I think
that.
so. I've heard stories, you know, not that I watch late night TV a lot anymore, but I remember somebody was on Fallon telling him that she had liked him. Some actress.
That was Nicole Kidman. Yes.
Yeah,
but
she
that
liked
was way
him
before he was even known. It was when he was struggling in New York before he got on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, it didn't mean they hung out together, but they would see each other, right?
But I just think this is cool. Sinatra at his height, Rickles at his height. They're hanging out in a restaurant together and talking and buddies and stuff. Just a real interesting perspective. Here's Rickles again. I'm on a Rickles tear here. He was co-hosting or hosting the Tonight Show.
Carson's cigarette box. Oh, my goodness, Uncle Carson's cigarette box.
They're coming. That's right. Yeah. You knew they were in the... Uh-oh. What the hell happened to this?
Well, it happened last night.
Who?
Don Rickles.
I did not see the
Don
show
Rickles did it last night.
That's an heirloom.
Well...
Is he in the...
He hit it. He hit it with his hand.
Is he taping now?
What? He's taping across the hall. CPO Sharkey.
Can I get over there? Rickles! Hold! Stop the taping. Stop the taping. Somebody broke my cigarette box. They told me you broke it on the show last night.
Well, I really...
That was, come on, that was a setup.
No, but
Come
I
on.
remember watching that as a kid. First of all, Rickles hosted the show and legitimately broke the cigar bar.
that, I believe,
cigarette
right.
bar. No, oh, you're saying afterwards was set up.
Yeah.
I'm sure it could have been. I mean, who
Right.
knows?
That's
But
funny, though.
it really was, because they would film it right across the hall. Carson said, "Let's do this." So that in spontaneity was really always with the Tonight Show.
Right. True. I have an actually interesting fact about The Tonight Show. You probably did not know this. Do you know, speaking of breaking things on the set, the only guest on The Tonight Show that was convicted of a crime he committed while on the show?
Wow. On camera? In other words, we could see it if you look
Yes.
it up. Okay.
You could see it. Bobcat Goldthwait. Remember the comedian
Yes.
Bob? He's still
Yeah,
around.
talk like that. A goofy voice he had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the high voice, that kind of thing. He's still around. He's still pretty popular. Apparently, he used lighter fluid to set one of the guest chairs on fire, and was never invited back. Not only that, but he was arrested and he was fined in Burbank courtroom $3,800, including the cost of
And you
replacing
can-
the chair.
You can bet Carson had something to do with that. Say, what are you doing on my set? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Like, really? Are you out of your mind?
And no one
Think about
really,
that.
I don't think anyone really knows why he did it. I guess he was trying to be funny, but yeah,
guess.
there you go.
Wow, that's a great fact. Now, we're turning a little bit now.
Great fact, but now let's move on.
We have to. There's another little guy that became big that was a guest on Letterman a few times. Let's listen to that and see if you know who this is.
See, it's funny, you know, when the comedy clubs first started, they had regular names, you know, Austin Comedy Club, the Comedy Works, those kind of places. Now they all have comedy names. In the last 6 weeks, I've been at Jokers, Giggles, Tickles, Ho-Hos, Ha-Has, Hee-Hees. Next month, I'm working a new place called which is right down. No, but what do you do on the road? You get up like about, let's say, 11:30. You read the whole paper.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole paper, you know, the kind of thing where you go, look at this, tuna casserole with a graham cracker crust. But I remember when we were in Tahoe, you were across the street, and it was like, you get up, you go down the lobby, you look at your watch, was it 1:30? Brady Bunch is on at 2.
there's the one and only Jay Leno, who eventually became the co-host. I keep saying that. Became the substitute host for Johnny Carson, and then replaced Johnny Carson. He was on Letterman, and again, we're not talking about Letterman because we're only talking about the Tonight Show.
Right.
So there's a little groundwork there as to Jay Leno. Now, what did you think of Jay Leno back in the day?
I love Jay Leno. In fact, when I was a big Dave Letterman fan, as I know you are.
Yes.
But when I found out any night that I knew Leno was going to be on, I made absolutely sure I watched it, because those bits between them are just, to me, they're just all-time classics.
Yeah, and they're not even just like these punchlines. They're just the presentation, the way he tells the story.
Right.
And the little thing about
Letterman would just start him, "Hey, Jay, what's on your mind?" Jay would go off, and they get into a conversation about it. And Leno was cutting edge, believe it or not. He was just witty. He was really, really a great
Let's listen to a
comic.
little more on Letterman. I have a little other clip. Let's see if we can
I
get more
remember
of
my
that.
dad and I in the front room saying, "Oh, look, Dad, there's where Jimmy Stewart lives." Things, you know, my mom's back. "We can enjoy it, Ma, if you want speeding." "What is it, Ma?" "Nothing, nothing." You know, that kind of... there's the Santa Monica Pier. There's a stop sign. "What, Ma?" "Nothing, nothing." I see the sign. I saw the sign, Mother. My dad is not a traveler. My dad likes to go to Sears. This is his idea. Yeah. Now, there's an interesting. Whatever happened to Roebuck? I mean, now, when it used to be Sears Roebuck.
Sears and
You
Roebuck,
talk about
sure.
your partner screwing you out of your half of the business. See, Roebuck takes a 3-day week, comes in on Tuesday. "Where's my name?" Gets out. "Roebuck, I tell you, get there."
I mean, just stream of consciousness, it seems like, but you know as well as I do, I bet you that's all prepared for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but
Yeah.
unique stuff. And by the way, once you use material on a show like that, right? America hears it, so you can still use it as your material in comedy clubs and stuff. But
Oh,
people
sure.
have heard it already, so you kind of,
Yeah.
you're using material that you're probably not going to use again.
Right, exactly. But I think he wrote stuff specifically when he knew he was going to be on Letterman, that he had specially for that show.
And really funny stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Really funny stuff.
What
Listen
happened to him?
Yeah, we'll
Sad.
talk about that shortly. This is his Tonight Show theme. I mean, things do happen to people. You do mature. You know, I'm just going to analogize it to this, and you may disagree with me on this, but Paul McCartney in his day, even when he was on his own with Wings, and even thereafter into the 80s, produced some great stuff. at least commercially, for let's say from the 90s on, except for that one song from 9/11, I forget the name of it, really did nothing commercially thereafter. Is it because you get tired? Is it because you don't put as much time into it? Is it because people aren't listening anymore? And it really is still good.
No, because I think Leno thought he had to pull in the reins because he was on the Tonight Show. It's, look, most of the audience is middle America, or at least was at that time. It was watching Johnny, and he knew the audience he had to play to, and unfortunately, I mean, to me, he just it couldn't be cutting edge anymore, and he had to fit into a certain box, if you will, that he felt he had to stay in, and it's sad.
It's true, I agree. But here's another question: then is because you're doing jokes not for 30 days in a row at all those comedy clubs and perfecting it, and then now you've got your bit and you do it on the Tonight Show twice or 5 times a year, right? You're on every single night.
Yeah, but you have writers, you have writers that
but
know
that's the
you.
Problem. You're like, he wrote himself those bits on Letterman that are clearly his voice. When you hear him talking about politics and other, different current events on the Tonight Show, doing those jokes, punchlines, he didn't seem to me like a punchline guy, to be honest with you. And in his earlier days, these were sort of stories and sort of fun.
To me, they were still watered down. Everything he did was just so watered down. It was disappointing.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it was.
He was on for a long time.
He sure was.
Come on back and explore Jay Leno to Fallon on Everything Old is New Again.
Until you cut me off. Another thing, Doug, we gotta go. Okay, what were you saying before? Yeah. All right. Well, next topic.
That's all the setup. Anytime.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Okay, this is why you have to read these personals very carefully. This seems like the ideal man. Just one... Well, I'm going to read it to you. Never married white male, honest, gentle, affectionate, widely traveled college professor, writer, PhD, seeks spiritual, intelligent, meaningful relationship. I am heterosexual. I enjoy jazz, metaphysics, dressing as a woman, and dining out. Hey, wait a minute!
Okay, we're back on Everything Old is
Hilarious.
New Again. David Cohen does not laugh at that. I still think that Leno has an attraction. I did think all those bits that he did were funny and fun. He gave up on a lot of them after a while. I do think, that in my perspective, Jay Leno I saw him in comedy clubs. I saw him, of course, on Letterman, as we've just heard, and I thought he was tremendous. Then he got to the Tonight Show. What do you think happened then, Dave?
I think he just... as we were saying before the break, I don't know why it happened, but he just became really plain vanilla. That's the best way. If you knew what he did beforehand and then you watched him after, you could see the night and day difference. He played it safe. And to me, it wasn't funny. It wasn't the comedian that I knew and that you knew and loved before that.
Yeah, and not to say that he was dirty, because he really was never dirty.
No, he was not dirty.
It was just different cutting-edge stuff. I don't know, the different stories that we heard about his dad, and as we heard in last segment, it was just, I don't know what to say. It's a different take on it, but I have to give him a credit on some level. He did more shows on The Tonight Show, 3,775, than anyone else. And that's just his first run. He came back and did another 835. So he's done. And just as a comparison, Carson did 2,000 shows himself. His show ran for 4,531, but he was only on 2,000 times.
He had a lot of guest hosts.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, this man was dedicated to his craft, and he was number one. Let's be clear. During the Leno years, except for 2 years that Letterman beat him, he was number one every year. So
True.
let's,
True.
give him a little credit. But, I understand what you're saying, because I saw it too. But, there was it became flat, it became mundane. Things became rote and routine. So that's why I think NBC eventually said, listen, we're gonna try something else, but not before he gave it a shot and started doing some jaywalking on reality.
Who was
TV.
the second American Idol, the second year? Who was the guy that won?
Ruben Studdard?
Ruben Studdard, very good. Who was the second president of the United States?
I don't know that one.
Reuben Studdard.
Oh, yeah?
Same name.
Same name? Awesome.
Can you name 3 explorers that had something to do with America?
George.
George.
Something.
George something. Can you name 3 Kardashians?
Kim, Chloe, Courtney.
Excellent.
Now, I tell you, it's a funny concept, and if you have an open mind, you're not like a crank like I am, you think that's funny. That annoys me so much.
Absolutely.
That these people
Right.
can't
That's not funny. Yeah.
But it is.
I mean, it is, yes.
You know what I mean?
For
Like,
humor's
how do you not
sake,
know
yes.
who's on Mount Rushmore? But the Kardashians. It makes
Right.
you insane.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's where he started to lose me. I'm not of a position where I want to get aggravated at 11:30 at night. I'm
Right.
aggravated up till 11:30.
And I don't like that he beat out Letterman for the Tonight Show. And the things he did and the dirty pool he played. And
yes, and he'll
still
blame
like it.
his manager, this woman that was a manager of his that went behind everyone's back and did all these different things that were nefarious. And there's a whole show there.
And
to
then what he
talk
did to
about.
Conan, I don't like him.
Yeah,
I don't like him. Sorry.
All right. Well,
I mean,
let's
look,
see
maybe he'll be a guest on our show and then I'll love him. but,
Exactly.
you know.
Let's see what Conan has to say about that.
Hosting the Tonight Show has been the fulfillment of a lifelong dream for me. And I just want to say to the kids out there watching, you can do anything you want in life. Yeah, unless Jay Leno wants to do it too. I know. No, we've had a lot of fun being here these last 7 months, but like everything in life, the fun has to come to an end a decade too early. And I think that's just an old motto that I was taught long ago.
That's Conan O'Brien. I think an underrated talk show host.
Yes.
He's still on now. I think it's TBS.
TBS, yeah.
Is it 10 o'clock, though? I'm not even sure because you kind of get lost, unless you're a real fan. For some reason, network TV still matters with these late night shows. You don't
true.
search around it's a psychological thing. You don't search around at 11:30 at night to
Yeah,
find
that's a good point. It's
cable stuff.
Right. It's been ingrained in our brains that if you want to
that
watch
weird?
something, it's right. It's ABC, CBS, Fox. Right?
Because I don't know. To me, Conan O'Brien is a funny individual,
Yeah, he is.
and he does some nice interviews too. And he does those bits that we talked about. We even had one on our show when we were doing horse racing. He went to Santa Anita and he called a horse race. It was pretty funny. So they all do these shticks and bits, and they have the bands. And
I
all.
blame Leno for that, though. I blame Leno for booting.
Just in case you're not familiar, of course, Jay Leno was on the show, and then they had Conan O'Brien replace him for 7 months with Leno's
because
knowledge.
Leno, and this is the callback to Steve Allen. Leno left to do a primetime show.
10
right? It
o'clock.
was like 10 o'clock. A complete failure.
4 months he was on the air.
Then he
and-
started to cry. "Oh, I want to go back to late night.
So then the deal was they was going to say, okay, what we'll do is we'll start
The Tonight Show with Conan.
at 11. I'm sorry,
I mean,
at
at
12,
12.
and we're going to have Jay Leno at 11 and cut out the news. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't have minded. It would have been a decent setup, but still, Conan, believe it or not, said, "Listen, I'm not doing this. You know why? Because I respect the franchise of the Tonight Show, and it was always at 11:30, and I'm not changing until 12 just because of me and my contract and so forth.
Right.
So you got to appreciate
Yeah,
that.
he left.
you
He
know.
left. He was not happy, and
I mean,
left.
he could
And
be
good
on
for
right
him.
now at 12 o'clock.
Right. Right.
And
yeah, I think he did the right thing.
I do too. So maybe tune into him. We should give a call to him and have him on since we're talking so gloriously
I
about
know.
him.
Maybe
Why
we'll
not?
have them both on. Have them air it out, on our
We
show.
can have a little mediation right here on Everything Old is New Again. Have them have the arguments that they love to have.
That we'd love them to have.
Let's listen to now the first show of the most recent show, which is the Jimmy Fallon show, Tonight Show. We've heard Steve Allen, the first show ever. Now we're going to hear the first show of Jimmy Fallon.
Here's your host, Jimmy Fallon!
Thank you. Please have a seat. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome to The Tonight Show. I'm Jimmy Fallon, and I'll be your host for now. Of course, I wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't for the previous Tonight Show hosts, so I want to say thank you to Steve Allen, Jack Parr, Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, and Jay Leno. Very, very nice. Amazing.
And everybody having fun with the Leno situation.
Right.
But there's Jimmy Fallon. There's the new blood. There's the new take. I'm glad that he was. I got a nice little clip there kind of brings us square one, reviewing what we've done on the show tonight. Thank you, Jimmy Fallon. Maybe we should have him on the show, too.
Oh, I'm sure he'd be here in a heartbeat.
Because he is now, from what I understand, huge.
Oh, he is
huge, beyond huge.
But I think you and I, another thing we agree on is that we think that he's doing an amazing job with that franchise, right? The Tonight Show. Creative. He's doing new things that weren't done before while, sticking to the old format. I never, and I don't think you either liked him before this. I thought he was like a poor man's Adam Sandler, who I also don't like. But I got to tell you, I gave him a chance, and he's doing a phenomenal job.
I stumbled onto it maybe 6 months in, and I couldn't believe that I was becoming a fan.
Right.
Because I did not like anything he had done previously. So now this is a weird question, an odd thing, and I posed this off the air, is he, of course, must have some input, if not a lot of input, into the creation and format of this show. And therefore, where did it come from? Because this Saturday Night Live stuff he did was malarkey, and the stuff that he did in the movies, the 2 movies he did, wasn't so very good. But boy, he pulled a rabbit out of a hat. I think some of it is he was a huge fan of the Tonight Show as well.
He was. He really respected it. And the other thing is, it's a different world now. Things are viral. The little bits that he does in that show, you don't have to necessarily stay up to see it. You can watch it on the interweb, and it's getting a buzz that way as well. Did you hear what Jimmy Fallon said? Not only can you see it here, but hey, he's got this guest tonight, and you'll DVR it and watch it. My son he's 16. He's watching Jimmy Fallon.
See that? Every Wednesday night or afternoon they do a tweet. And if you're on with him on a tweet, it's a question, and they'll then pose the question, and a couple of people that responded, they'll read those responses. So they're very cutting edge,
he's
very smart.
Yep.
As we are on Everything Old is New Again.
We have podcasts, right?
Thank you.
We're
Listen to us every week right here. Come on back and enjoy the best of Everything Old is New Again. We're here again right now. I just wanted to recap that we've had some fun looking at just The Tonight Show. Next week, we're going to take a look at everything but The Tonight Show that challenged The Tonight Show. So I think that'll be some fun. Who do you think you're looking forward to hearing about and talking about next week?
You were talking about, Letterman, number one, right?
Right.
I think there were some other really good guests that didn't get their due, specifically.
Guests or hosts?
Sorry, hosts who didn't get their due. I don't know if we're going to mention him, but the one guy I used to like?
Yes.
I think I was probably the only one. Alan Thicke. Remember Thick of the Night?
Interesting.
I thought he was pretty good.
He's going to be a guest on our third show when we talk about shows that failed as late night shows and why. Come on back to Everything Old is New Again, same time, same channel next week.